Analysis of Michel de Montaigne's Authenticity in Writing by John Vespasian. Authenticity starts and ends with critical thinking. It revolves around checking the accuracy of facts, contesting ready-made conclusions, and pursuing consistency. Truth is the outcome of authenticity, and ethics is the compilation of practical wisdom. Michel de Montaigne, 1533 to 1592, pursued authenticity day after day. He devoted 2 decades to writing essays that often questioned self-evident truths and then came up with better conclusions. Considering the strong social pressure exerted on writers in the 16th century, I see Montaigne's essays as the archetype of authenticity. Few authors of his generation have devoted so much effort to assess opposing arguments, extract examples from history, and arrive at independent conclusions. My favorite example of authenticity is Montaigne's essay titled, "That Men Are Justly Punished for Being Obstinate in Defending a Fort That Is Unreasonable to Defend." In this essay, Montaigne employs his usual structure. First, he states a controversial thesis. Second, he presents anecdotes from ancient history that illustrate his thesis. Third, he reviews in detail the arguments in favor and against. Fourth, he draws a conclusion, either confirming his thesis or proving it wrong. Montaigne's authenticity relies on structure. His extended assessment of historical evidence enables him to present controversial conclusions as irrefutable. That men are justly punished for being obstinate in defending a fort that is unreasonable to defend. Even though he endorses unorthodox positions, Montaigne remains credible because of his ample historical research. He resorts to his personal library, consisting of about 100 volumes, which he had repeatedly read. Montaigne knew his favorite Greek and Roman authors by heart, and was able to quote them off the cuff. I'm referring to Cicero, 106 to 43 BC, Aristotle, 384 to 322 BC, Plutarch, 46 to 120 AD, Seneca, for BC AD 65, Julius Caesar, 100 to 44 BC, and Marcus Aurelius, 121 to 180 AD, just to name a few. Authenticity becomes particularly strong when Montaigne combines historical anecdotes, personal experience, and moral assessment. He does precisely that in his essay, That Men Are Justly Punished for Being Obstinate in Defending a Fort That Is Unreasonable to Defend. Montaigne mentions the pointless resistance of inadequately fortified towns against invaders, whether in ancient Rome or in the Byzantine Empire. Constantinople would have fared better, he argues, if it had surrendered in 1453. When people opt for fighting lost battles, they are inflicting unnecessary harm upon themselves and upon their peers. There is a moment to resist and fight, argues Montaigne, and a moment to acknowledge one's defeat. Examples of Montaigne's authenticity in writing. Montaigne had witnessed how religious wars in France had ravaged towns and villages. Both Catholics and Huguenots had fought with ferocity, while on many occasions, they could have parleyed. They could have reached a settlement and saved the lives of thousands of people, argued Montaigne. In ancient Athens, a similar situation had ensued during the trial of Socrates, 469 to 399 BC, says Montaigne. He reproaches Socrates for not being flexible enough to circumvent the laws and avoid the trial. Montaigne's reproaches are sound, but I think that they don't go far enough. Since Socrates was expecting to walk free at the end, I cannot blame it from withstanding the trial. If the trial had been fair, he would have been acquitted. My reproach to Socrates is that, after being convicted in an unjust manner, he should have seized the opportunity to escape and go into exile. I regret that Socrates proved unable to accept that the trial had been a sham and that he should run away. We all tend to ignore warning signs when they contradict an idea or goal that we cherish, concludes Montaigne. All forms of self-delusion can prove lethal. Montaigne asks himself if Julius Caesar, 100 to 44 BC, could have avoided being assassinated. I would answer this question positively. In the prior months, Caesar could have parleyed with his opponents instead of pouring oil into the fire. He could have looked for a compromise instead of antagonizing them. Authenticity in Michel de Montaigne's conclusions. I consider this essay of Montaigne's a salient illustration of authenticity because it defends an unorthodox insight, better parley than perish unnecessarily, by means of an impressive array of historical examples and personal testimony. As a positive example of intellectual flexibility, Montaigne is mentioning Cicero, 106 to 43 BC, who had himself praised the virtues of temperance and compromise in his essay titled On the Republic. I must though clarify that Cicero was referring to flexibility in policy and implementation details, not in fundamental moral principles. Montaigne praises the wisdom of Scipio Africanus, 236 to 183 BC, for displaying alertness and flexibility. Those enabled him to relinquish untenable positions during the Second Punic War, regroup his forces, and come back stronger in the next battle. I agree with Montaigne that it is unreasonable to fight lost battles, and that we should look for negotiated solutions. It is tragic that some history books present quasi-suicidal behavior as exemplary. Montaigne formulates his conclusion carefully and refrains from using strong words. He writes that it is unreasonable to keep defending the indefensible, but in some of his examples, I would have used the word imprudent or reckless. The essay concludes with universal prescriptions that every reader should keep in mind. Inordinate obstinacy brings along its own punishments. Let's give realism priority over delusion. Let's keep an open mind so that we can learn from errors, setbacks, and criticism. There is no shame in admitting that we have made a mistake. It is certainly worse to keep going in the wrong direction just because we do not want to lose face. If you are interested in putting rational ideas into practice in all sort of situations, I recommend my book, Asymmetry: The Shortcut to Success When Success Seems Impossible. For more information, go to johnvespasian.com.